question 20, and I call the Honourable Member for Douglas Central, Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister for the Cabinet Office what legislation mechanism will be used to put in place border framework entry restrictions subsequent to ceasing use of the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Entry Restrictions Regulations, and if he will make a statement.
Will the Chief Minister to reply?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm sure that honourable members will agree that retaining the ability to restrict entry to the island as part of the response to the continuing COVID-19 global pandemic is vital. Our border restrictions have played and continue to play a key role in allowing our community to get back to some sense of normality. As the situation across the water sadly deteriorates, it is clear that we must have the ability to manage entry to our island if we are to protect our people. At present, the mechanism to put in place border framework entry restrictions when the current Emergency Powers Coronavirus Entry Restrictions regulations cease to have effect is to bring forward regulations under the Public Health Act 1990. It is intended that these regulations will provide the same powers as those set out within the entry restrictions regulations. Any subsequent changes to those regulations to change the restrictions at our borders would come before the Honourable Court of Tynwald for approval.
Supplementary question, Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I would like to thank the Chief Minister for having plans in place. Could the Chief Minister confirm then that the unamended Public Health Act 1990 can be and could be used for border control?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It can be amended at this moment in time. However, we have our Civil Contingencies Bill and that we're working on at this moment in time. So the Honourable Member has asked how we intend to do it at this moment in time. It's the Public Health Act 1990. If there is other legislation, such as the Civil Contingencies Bill, then that may well be the way forward. We've committed to doing our best to get it before this before Tynwald, before the end of this administration. But for the time being, the Public Health Act 1990, with amendments put forward by our Attorney General and then to Tynwald, will be the way forward.
Supplementary question, Mr Harmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Chief Minister and Minister for the Cabinet Office agree with me that actually, although there are provisions in the Public Health Act 1990, actually, if it remained in its current form, there would be no provision for penalty notices or custody or breach of regulations made under that Act, and actually there would be no method of enforcing, and that is actually why we're bringing the bill today. Would the Chief Minister agree?
Chief Minister to reply.
Absolutely. I thank the Honourable Member for raising that point of view, and I totally agree with his comments.
Supplementary question, Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. That's very helpful clarification from the Honourable Minister for Policy and Reform. Not all of the issues with the Public Health Act that were identified in the Attorney General's letter of the 27th of May are covered in today's amendments to the Public Health Act 1990 under the bill that's before us today. Would the Chief Minister agree with me? It was disappointing, therefore, that I didn't have answer to my questions in August and September to draw out that fact. And does the Chief Minister not agree that we need to actually have the time to make sure that we're amending the Public Health Act properly to deal with the border framework and some other issues that might still be there? Moreover, there's a clue in the title, Mr Speaker, and I'd like the Chief Minister to comment on this. Civil Contingencies Bill is about contingencies. Does the Chief Minister agree we shouldn't be planning to use the Contingencies Bill to deal with a known eventuality? And does the Chief Minister agree with me that he's already said that he doesn't expect any legislation from the immigration pathway to be in place to deal with the border control till April 2021?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for his statement. At the end of the day, we want to do what's right for the people of the Isle of Man and prepare legislation. I'm disappointed that some members are trying to play games here. We want to do what's right for the people of the Isle of Man. If that means the Public Health 1990, that's the way we'll go. If the Attorney General comes back and says it has to be done under the Civil Contingencies Bill, which then that's the intended replacement for the Emergency Powers Act 1936, then that's the way we'll have to go. At the end of the day, surely all we want is what's right for our people, and that's legally works to protect them. And we all want a border control, for example. I don't think there's anyone saying that they don't want to see some form of control. And it's up to our legal experts to advise us on what is the right way. They are saying that at this moment in time they intend to be making amendments to the 1990 Public Health Bill, but we have other legislation in the pipeline which might well be the best way forward. So we will do our utmost to protect the people of this island, and we'll bring to this honourable, Tynwald Court and this honourable court if we need to do the primary legislation. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr Harmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Chief Minister agree with me that there is a difference between the Civil Contingency Bill, which is coming much later and needs much more consultation and thought, which is about replacing or possibly replacing the Emergency Powers Act? That's one issue. And with the bill that's before the House today, which is around the courts and those measures that are in use and are still required even after the 26th of December, which is when the current provisions will fall.
Chief Minister to reply.
I thank the honourable member for Peel and Glen Faber for his comments and concur with his views. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Dr Allinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Chief Minister agree with me that we seem to be agreeing on the outcome, which is the protection of our community, but getting bogged down in the process about how to arrive at that point? Chief Minister has clearly stated the intended process for guaranteeing that on the basis of legal advice. And would he agree that what we need to concentrate on is delivering this in a decent timescale to deal with the imminent threat we face from across, which has become even more apparent this week? Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for Ramsey for his comments. Yes, he's absolutely right. At the end of the day, we are here to look after our people, and whatever the legislative way forward, the Council of Ministers will respect the views of our learned Attorney General on developing a policy to protect our people that's legal and decent. I think during this, without this whole COVID situation, one of the things that's really saddened me is that this House and the Tynwald Court spent more time discussing whether it was the 1990 Public Health Act or the 1936 Emergency Powers Act than the frustrations when we're trying to look after our people is amazing sometimes. But I'm sure we all want to do what's right and for the people of our island, that we will work together. And when the legislation that we are advised by our Attorney General, I am not a legal expert. I might have studied O&A level law, that's about my limit in knowledge. We have to trust our legal advisors on what is the correct way forward to take it, and I'm sure we will get it right together.
Supplementary question, Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And does the Chief Minister agree with me that we as we all share the desire for that outcome of a safe border and a safe island, it's a big lie to question anybody's motives in respect of that aspiration of the outcome. But does the Chief Minister also agree that it's not the Attorney General who makes law of the Isle of Man, it's the branches of Tynwald, the House of Keys and the Legislative Council, and we do need to spend time to make sure we have a proper Public Health Act in place and also a proper replacement for the Emergency Powers Act if necessary. And we have time today with the consideration of a bill that could be used and in fact is being used to address the Public Health Act. And I for one will be speaking shortly to request further time to draft amendments to the bill before us in this House at the moment to amend the Public Health Act properly, taking advice from the Clerk as well as the Attorney General and every other body in the island who wants to contribute.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for giving his commitment to work with government to deliver legislation to protect the people of the Isle of Man. I look forward to his support with all government legislation going forward. And yes, we do. We make the law, but we would be fools to think that we make it without taking on board the advice from our Attorney General, who was there to advise us on what is correct and the way forward.
Final supplementary on this question, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And it's really a follow-on from Mr Thomas, but the Chief Minister said that honourable members of this House and the other House spent more time concerned with the Public Health Act and the Emergency Powers Act than actually looking after our people. I think the Chief Minister really should retract that, and also I feel that the Public Health Act could have been altered and a notifiable disease could have been added as COVID quite quickly without an awful lot of the effort that members have gone into. We've done it, we've come through it, and I just feel that the Chief Minister should retract that we, as this Honourable House and the other House, we're doing our job.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, and thank the Honourable Member for the question. I would point out that the 1990 Act does not allow for criminal to send someone to prison or for a fine of the 10,000 that we brought in place. It didn't allow for that. Now we're hopefully going to be amending it going forward, and I gave a personal view.